He's doing the intro now, and then.
I hit the record button.
Shall I start? Am I on? No. Okay, I guess I'll start. Okay, then he'll call in. Well, good evening. And as they say in my tradition, glory to Jesus Christ. Everyone can hear me? It's okay. It's going all right. As Father said, my name is Father Thomas Loya, and we're going to look at a part of love and responsibility. Hopefully, if you have your books, and as he said, we're going to start on page 101. This is called the psychology, kind of like a psychoanalysis of love.
I'll be telling you this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello? Try that now.
Hello?
Is it working now? Yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Person online says they can hear well.
Oh, okay.
So there's no output, no video or audio. sorry, what? I can barely understand what you're saying. There's some kind of echo on your phone or something. Yeah. Can you turn up the audio a lot? Maybe?
All right, it's all the way up.
Okay, it's all the way up.
Is this
That's
All the way
okay?
up. My father is wearing his microphone.
And my volume meter is going up
And
into
the
red
volume
zone.
meter is going up and down on the computer.
It's in the red zone.
Test it. Can you say something? Father?
Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me? This is a little class on love and responsibility, the psychoanalysis of love. Am I coming through
Is that good?
okay?
He's speaking now. Is that good?
We're on, starting on pages 101 to 118 in the Love and Responsibility book.
Okay. Okay. Do you want him to just keep talking? Okay, maybe if you could just start reading the book.
Okay.
they're working on their end too.
Oh, okay. So they, all right. Oh, I read a few good quotes. The visual sense includes something more, a specific psychic quality
He's reading the book out
and a
loud now.
power which the organs mentioned do not possess, either taken together individually. The psychic quality belongs to the sphere of cognition. By sight, as by any other sense, we obtain knowledge of particular objects. Or it would be better to say we obtain knowledge of the objects in a particular way. Sense impressions are very closely connected with that specific property and power.
Are you talking to me? Are you saying that he can start? Okay.
I can start now? Okay. We're all
Okay,
set.
thanks, Father. Bye.
I'm going to turn off we're not going to monitor them at all
Okay.
because it's going to echo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we can start.
Try again.
Try it again. Again, I'm Father Thomas Loya. Welcome to this section of Love and Responsibility. This is the section on the psychoanalysis of love. It's pages 101 to 118. Now, I brought a little visual for you. Here's a picture of a guy, a picture of a girl. Notice the guy is in the bar, so is the girl. Guy's got his beer. And let me check, make sure it's a real beer, not this light beer stuff. Make sure he's a real man. Looks like he's drinking a real beer. And he's looking at the girl. The girl's looking across at him. And he's probably thinking to himself, for instance, gee, she's hot. So you have to say it like that. She's hot. That's how they say it. She's probably thinking the same thing about him. Or, for the girl, maybe she's thinking he's cute. Okay, so what we're going to look at today is exactly what is actually happening here. Because this initial look can result in something. It can result in the two people coming to know each other better, getting involved in a relationship, maybe even dating, maybe even getting married. And maybe all of that ending up badly. So what we want to do is we want to look at what actually is happening with this initial attraction. In fact, John Paul II went deep into what we call the psychology of what's happening here. We call it psychology of love, but it's actually a psychology of attraction, of what leads eventually, could lead eventually to love, but what maybe is not love yet. Okay, he's looking at her, she's looking at him. Now, let's start to take it almost like frame by frame. What John Paul II does in Love and Responsibility is he goes deep into the mind and the heart, the soul of the persons and of the human experience.
There's a big echo, he said.
I have no idea where the echo is coming from.
Technical difficulty.
Technical difficulties indeed.
That's okay.
So it's better now?
Yeah, she's not, Sister Ann's not sure what to do about
Go
that.
get me my, in the bag I have a headset.
Okay, hang on, Father.
In the bag I don't have a headset.
Okay, she's going to put a headset on to try to monitor it.
It's in the little office. On my pile of stuff. Sorry about that, y'all.
Okay. Maybe you can read your book while we're waiting.
Okay, she's going to put a headset on.
Okay, keep talking, Father.
Okay, Father's going to keep
Okay,
talking.
are they still rolling? Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned, John Paul II is going to kind of like take this, what is sometimes an instantaneous event. He sees her, she sees him, they think each other's hot. He's going to look at what is actually happening there and kind of like, almost like frame by frame or level by level. Because most people don't even think of this. They just sort of react. They feel something, they see something, they like it, they want it, they go after it, and that's it. Then they sometimes wonder why it ends up badly, because they don't really know what's going on. They don't know what's going on in their hearts, in their mind, in their heads, so on. But we're going to look at that today. And one of the things that John Paul II said is, if you start from the beginning, okay, he sees her, she sees him. It says the first element that we have is what he calls the senses. In other words, it's our ability to see, to hear, to smell. It's our initial input of data. We see something. Okay, we're sensing something. We see something. That's the first thing. Now, because we see it, it also gives us a certain, what he calls knowledge of that, what we see. In other words, he knows this is woman. She knows this is man. So the next thing then is called cognition, or knowing, like knowledge. We have a certain knowledge of the thing. We sense it. It gives us an information, so we have the knowledge of it. And then it leaves an impression on us. That's the third thing. Impression. That impression, he says, can be there even after they're still not sensing or seeing each other, for instance. It's kind of a memory thing. I want to just read a couple of quotes from the text before we go any further, so you can hear from John Paul II himself. This is starting on page 101. About partway down the paragraph, he says, the visual sense includes something more, a specific psychic quality and a power which the organs mentioned do not possess, either taken together or individually. This psychic quality belongs to the sphere of cognition. Okay, now we'll go down to the next paragraph. Sense impressions are very closely connected with that specific property and power of the senses, which is called cognition. A little further in that paragraph. Again, we're at page 101, towards the bottom. An impression presupposes immediate contact between one of the senses and a given object. The length of its existence is also, properly speaking, the duration of the immediate experience. Okay, now he gets real technical and all that. Okay, let's go to the next page. Turn the page. On page 102 at the top. Our external senses are those which establish immediate contact with the object while it is present to them. Our interior senses maintain that contact when the object is no longer within the immediate range of the external senses. So, in other words, if they don't talk to each other or see each other anymore, they can still have a memory of each other, a sense, an impression of each other, which might motivate them to look each other up again. All right, now we have an impression, and with that impression, when something leaves an impression on you, you usually have a reaction to it, a emotional reaction. So the next thing that's happening here between the two of them, in this instant when they see each other as hot, is some kind of emotional reaction. Emotion. You sense it, gives you information, leaves an impression. Now you start to develop a certain feeling about it or about that person. This is sometimes where people find what they call so-called love at first sight. Okay? Basically what they're doing is they're developing an emotional reaction to the impression and the knowledge of what they have sensed. Okay, see, this is all happening only instantaneously every time we encounter anything, not just a person, but anything that we see. It could be a new car, it could be a new dress, it could be anything. In our case, it happens to be a person, persons. Okay, now, an emotion, though, is based upon something. And before we get to that, let's look at what he says about emotion. We go down to the bottom of page 102. Emotions are separate and distinct from sense impressions. And what's that?
Okay. I need you to be more still at the camera. Don't do anything creative because it's getting all blurry and making them see it.
Oh,
Oh, okay. Can I still write here?
He said be boring with the camera.
all right.
Okay. Okay, page 102. Emotions are separate and distinct from sense impressions. An emotion is also a sensory reaction to some object, but the content of the reaction differs from the content of an impression. In the content of an impression, what is reflected is the image of an object, whereas in an emotion, we are reacting to a, and here's the important word, we're reacting to a value, which we find in that object. For we must take into account the fact that the different objects which we encounter in our immediate sensory experience impinge on our attention not only as having content but having value. A sense impression is a reaction to content. An emotion is a reaction to value. In other words, why would he have an emotional feeling or sense towards her? It must mean that he, as a guy, must value the woman or womanhood, and vice versa. So you see, there's a value put on something. We feel towards something based on how we value it. It has a certain value to us. Okay, let's go on now. Further on to page 103, in that first paragraph, about halfway down. When its object is a material value, the emotion is shallower, more superficial. When, however, the object of an emotion is a supramaterial or spiritual value, it reaches more deeply into a man's psyche. This is understandable. After all, the human spirit and its powers have obviously had, directly or indirectly, a larger share in the emergence of such an emotion. All right, let's go now to then this last word, value. See, all this is happening between the two of them at that first sight. That's what creates all the tingling or the interest and what makes someone say they're hot. All right, value. It is, okay, let's go to the bottom of page 103 and start that sentence there. But if human love begins with an impression, if everything in it, even its spiritual content, depends upon that impression, this is because the impression is accompanied by an emotion, which makes it possible to experience another person as a value, or putting it differently, enables two persons, a woman and a man, each to experience the other as a value. For this reason, we must, in our further psychological analysis of love, constantly refer to values. All right. Now, these are the things that are happening in the seeing, in the perceiving or sensing of something or somebody. Okay? Sort of the process, the stages of what's happening. Now, this results in something, though. It has basically three results. Sensuality. In other words, we're reacting to what is sensual, like what is physical. Sentimental. Sentimental doesn't mean thinking about things in the past. It means basically a feeling, an emotion, a way of feeling about somebody or something. And finally, big word, integration or integrated love. Now again, we're going to move here like we did here. We're going to start here and move that way, sort of like a hierarchy in a sense. In other words, this is higher than this. This is higher than that, and so on. So it works from here and gets to be a kind of a hierarchy of values. Same thing here. The sensual. Let's see what he says about the sensual. This is page 104. Any immediate contact between a man and a woman is always the occasion of a sensory experience for both of them. Okay? Now let's flip over to the next page, on page 105. Each of these persons makes an impression on the other thanks to the values experienced together with intellectual cognizance of a person of the other sex. The values are the object of emotion. It is in fact they which coalesce with the impression and count for its vividness to the subject receiving it. Okay, now further down. Second paragraph. Sensuality always implies experiencing a particular value bound up with this sensory awareness. Specifically, we are concerned with sexual value, connected above all with the body of a person of the other sex. Now, further down then. Another consideration is of real importance to sensuality, namely that when it only stirs sensuality, a body is commonly experienced as a potential object of enjoyment. Sensuality in itself has a consumer orientation. It is directed primarily and immediately towards a body. It touches the person only indirectly, tends to avoid direct contact. Even with bodily beauty, it has, as we have already said, only an indirect connection. For beauty is essentially an object of contemplation, cognitive, and to experience aesthetic values is not to exploit it. It gives joy, enjoyment as defined by Augustine in the word frui. Thus, sensuality really interferes with apprehension of the beautiful, even of bodily sensual beauty. Okay, what is he saying here? A lot of words. John Paul II used lots of words. And basically he's saying this. He sees her, she sees him. Basically, what is the first thing they see? They basically see their bodies. They might see some of the person coming through the body, but the initial glance is going to be basically, an attraction is going to be about the body. It goes back to our initial statement, they're hot, she's hot. Okay, now there's nothing wrong with that. That's okay to see something beautiful, to see the sensual is beautiful. God made it that way. He wants us to see that. But what John Paul II is saying is that this can sometimes be the level in which people relate to each other and believe that they love each other, especially when they begin to express or engage that attractiveness to their sensuality by physical expressions. Now, physical expressions can actually fool you. They can kind of con you into thinking you're in love, because by nature they're powerful, and they're also by nature meant for bonding. Okay, so sensuality is not wrong, it's just that it doesn't give the whole story yet. So we've got to go through our hierarchy yet. So we're not there yet. We're not arriving quite yet at what love really is. We're understanding, first of all, what's going on as we are attracted to someone, we see someone, and then we're going to look at what happens when we see them, and what we sometimes mistake for love, and what real love actually is. Okay, sensuality, he says also, let's see, let's go to page 106, at the top. Second paragraph. This orientation of sensuality is a matter of spontaneous reflexes. In this form, it is not primarily an evil thing, but a natural thing. That's what I just said. It's not evil to see someone as beautiful, as hot. I want to use that word. It's a natural thing. Okay, but we don't stop there. See, there's more to it. Go down to the next paragraph, page 106, second paragraph. Sensuality itself is on no account to be identified with the sexual vitality of a man or woman's body, for this has a purely unconscious and infrasensual physiological character. I know, more big words. This is why we come across manifestations of sensuality with a sexual coloring in children who are physically not yet sexually mature. In other words, what he's saying is that even children can be attracted to each other. You know, little Johnny likes little Susie, right? Okay, well, that's not love. In fact, there's a word, we used to call it puppy love. Okay, it's not really love. But there is an attraction there. It's based basically on physicality. Okay, natural, not wrong. But there's more to it. That's the point. There's more to it. Let's go now to the next page, page 107. The top, the second paragraph. Hence, sensuality expresses itself mainly in an appetitive form. A person of the other sex is seen as an object of desire, specifically because of the sexual value inherent in the body itself. For it is in the body that the senses discover that which determines sexual difference, or sexual otherness. Now, a few sentences down. Sensuality is connected with the stirrings of the body, especially in its so-called erogenous zones. This shows its close connection with the inner sexual vitality of the organism itself. For a body possessing male characteristics needs a body possessing female characteristics for the objective end served by the sexual urge. The objective end of the sexual urge, of course, is to unite the two people as one, as you can only do in marriage, and to be open to new life. Okay, that's the end of the sexual act. That's why we have sexuality. One of the reasons we have it. Okay, let's go down the bottom paragraph on 107. However, a human person, as we know, cannot be an object for use. Now, the body is an integral part of the person, and so must not be treated as though it were detached from the whole person. Both the value of the body and the sexual value, which finds expression in the body, depend upon the value of the person. There's that word value again, and person is key. Given then interdependence, a central reaction in which the body and sex are a possible object for use threatens to devalue the person. To react in this way to the body of a person means to see using that body as a possibility. Okay, so if they just stop at the level of she's hot, and that's how they want to relate to each other, they're going to open themselves up to using each other. Now, they may not know that at the beginning, they may not feel that, because if they come together physically, it's going to feel good. It's going to feel bonding. They're going to have a kind of a sense of, but in a counterfeit way, the one thing that we all desire: intimacy, closeness, oneness with somebody. Okay, well, the sensual can give you a kind of a, in a sense, almost like a counterfeit message of that or experience of that. And that's why relationships that are based on this too much on the sensual, usually, unless they're modified, they grow, they usually end up very badly. Basically, they both feel used, they end up sometimes hating each other, and so on. Okay, but now there's another level here let's get to. First, it's on the level of the body, the sensual. Now, on a level of the sentiments, means, okay, it's not just the body, it's maybe what I feel about that person. I really like them. Okay, let's look at that then. And for that, we go now, let's go to page 109. Sentimentality, under the category sentiment and love, the bottom of the page, 109. Sentimentality must be clearly distinguished from sensuality. Okay, I'm going to go drop down a little bit further. When this emotion has as its object a sexual value residing in the body itself as a possible object of enjoyment, it is manifestations of sensuality. Okay, we established that already. However, a sexual value which is the object of the emotion is by no means necessarily connected with the body itself as a possible object of enjoyment. It may be connected with the whole person of the other sex. Okay, drop down a little bit further in that paragraph on page 110, top paragraph. This susceptibility, which is different from sensual excitability to the sexual value residing in a whole person of the other sex, to femininity or masculinity, should be called sentiment. Okay, in other words, they're attracted to each other not just because of their body, but he's attracted to her precisely because she's a woman, and a man is to be attracted to a woman. We're designed that way, and vice versa. So there can be an attraction that is not just based on the body, but it's based on an emotional attractiveness, being attracted to her as a person, or he as the female person, and he as the male person. Okay. That's the sentiment. So let's read some more. Sentimental susceptibility is the source of affection. Okay, we're going to drop down a few sentences. For sensuality, one part of this integral sense impression, the body, immediately stands out from and is, as it were, disassociated from the rest, whereas sentiment remains attached to a whole individual of the other sex. Sexual value, therefore, continues to reside in the whole person and is not confined only to that person's body. Also, because of this, in sentiment, we do not see that conspicuous drive for enjoyment which is so characteristic of sensuality. Affection is not an urge to consume. It is therefore compatible with the contemplative moods which go with a sense of beauty and responsive to aesthetic values. In the male, in the guys, affection is permeated with a strong feeling for admiration of femininity, and the woman with a similar feeling admiration for masculinity. No desire to use the other is discernible within the limits of affection as such. Okay, so it's pretty good. It's better than just the sensual. But what's not quite complete about it? All right, we'll read on. Next page, page 111. Second paragraph, about the middle. It is pretty generally recognized that woman is by nature more sentimental than man, and man more sensual. In other words, she's going to feel more connected to him through sentiment, through emotion. That's by nature how women are. They're designed more for relational intimacy, so they tend to experience attraction to the other opposite sex through a kind of a relational bonding, a relational connectedness. The male is a little more attracted or connected through the sensual by nature. Why is that? Because the male by nature is designed by God to be very visual. And so the male is very prone to the perception of visual beauty, especially in the feminine. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with him. He's less than the woman. It's just different. And we have to understand this. And girls, this is especially important for you to understand when it comes to dress. That's why dress is so important. Not because we're a bunch of prudes and want you to not have any fun, because we, and John Paul II, and you now, if you're learning theology of body, love and responsibility, you understand a little bit more now about how the minds work, how the souls, the psyches work in a man and in a woman. And this is very important. That's why learning this stuff is so important, because you learn about each other, how we're hardwired, what our needs are, what our weaknesses, our strengths are, and we can then work towards better relationships that way. But if you don't know this stuff, then you go ahead and you, like for instance, she may be dressed kind of what we might call provocatively and may not fully understand the message she's sending or the effect she's having on him, because she doesn't understand how he works. She might just say, well, I like this dress. Everybody's wearing this dress. What's wrong with it? I don't have any bad intentions. Well, maybe you don't. But you have to be aware of how he works, how his mind works on the level of the sensual. And he has to know how she works on the level of the sentimental or the emotional. In fact, when we know that about each other, we then have a choice. You can either use that to each other's good, or you can exploit each other with that knowledge too. Okay, let's move on. A little bit much more about the, let's get to the last one. Integration. Okay, if this is okay, and this is okay in itself, but they're not the ends, they're not complete yet. We still haven't arrived at a more mature way of relating, of what ultimately they really want, and that's love. See, we're not there yet. These are okay, but you can't stop there. Otherwise, you're going to be very unhappy. And that's why there are so many unhappy relationships and divorces and so on in this world, because people stop here. They think this is love. They think if they're attracted to something, that's love, or if they feel it, that's love. Love is not a feeling. Feelings are part of it, but love is not a feeling. Attractiveness is not love. It's parts of it. It's like the building blocks. It's part of the content, but it's not what love is. So let's see get closer to what really love is. And this is where this section on page 114, the problem of integrating love. In page 114, about halfway down, it says, love is certainly a drama in the sense that it is made up of happenings and of action. To do, to act, is the meaning of the Greek word dryo, which means drama. It's from which drama comes. Thus, the dramatis personae discover the plot of this drama in themselves, perceive their love as a psychological situation unique of its kind, and one of great and absorbing importance in their inner lives. A person is, of course, among all the varied objects of the visible world, that unusual one which is endowed with an inner self of its own and is capable of an inner life. So let's go now to the next page. Two characteristics are going to introduce here that are going to be indicative of a more integrated love. When we say integrated, that means all these parts work together in a beautiful balance. You don't stay at any one spot. It's not just about emotion. It's not just about what you know about a person, but you feel nothing. It's no one of these things by themselves. And see, this is where people get into trouble with their relationships. They tend to stay at one of these levels, or two of them or something. Integration means you got to have all these together. That's what it's what integration means bringing together something as a whole, as a oneness. Now, there's two qualities for that. One is truth, the other one is freedom. Let's look on page 115, halfway down the first paragraph. Truth is a condition of freedom. For if a man can preserve his freedom in relation to the objects which thrust themselves on him in the course of his activity as good and desirable, it is only because he is capable of viewing these goods in the light of truth, and so adopting an independent attitude to them. In other words, if he's seeing things honestly, he's going to have a greater experience of love. If he sees her as not just hot, not just sensual or sentimental, but as a person, yeah, sure, beautiful, maybe feel something for her, but she's a person, that's the truth. See, he's seeing her as he's seeing her honestly, or she is seeing him honestly. That's what's going to lead to the good relationship. Turn the page to let's go to 116, the bottom. Freedom and truth and freedom determine the spiritual imprint which marks the various manifestations of human life and human activity. They penetrate the remotest recesses of human action and experience, filling them with a content of which we never meet the slightest trace in the lives of animals. Okay, let's go to the next page, the top. Love is always an interior matter, a matter of the spirit. See, it's not just the body or even of the feeling. It's a matter of the spirit, of the soul. To the extent to which it ceases to be an interior matter, a matter of the spirit, it also ceases to be love. Doesn't matter what you feel. If it's not going on in your soul as a spiritual state of freedom and of honesty, it's not going to be love. You're not going to end up with love. What remains of it in the senses and in the sexual vitality of the human body does not constitute its essential nature. The will is to say the final authority in ourselves, without whose participation no experience has full personal value or the gravity appropriate to the experiences of the human person. The value of the person is closely bound up with freedom, and freedom is a property of the will. I'm on page 117, by the way. It is love, especially that demands freedom. Love demands freedom. The commitment to freedom is, in a sense, its psychological essence. That which does not derive from freedom, that which bears the marks not of free commitment but of determination and compulsion, cannot be acknowledged as love. It lacks its essential character. In other words, it is saying, "Well, I can't help myself. We love each other." No, that's not love. See, you're not free. That's compulsion. Love is marked, characteristic of love is, it is free. It is a free act of the will to see honestly and to choose to do what is best for the other. That's what love is. Love is not something that makes you enslaved to a passion or a compulsion. That way it's just compulsion. It's one of these other things. It's sentiment or sensuality and so on. All right. We're almost done here with this part of the presentation. A couple more points. Down the next paragraph on page 117. Second paragraph. A really free commitment of the will is possible only on the basis of truth. The experience of freedom goes hand in hand with the experience of truth. Every situation has its own psychological truth. Sensual desire has one truth, emotional commitment another. It is a subjective truth. A man truly desires X since he discovers in his inner life an explicit feeling, directed specifically towards her, originating in the impression which she has made on him, just as a woman may be truly committed emotionally to a man because she finds in her inner life such emotions, such a disposition to emotion, such a desire to be near and to lean upon him. So that's that intimacy I talked about. Okay, let's go drop down. Bottom paragraph. Love, however, only insists on objective truth. Only thanks to this, only on this basis can the integration of love take place. As long as you consider it only in the light of its subjective truth, meaning what you feel, what you experience, we can obtain no full picture of it and can say nothing of its objective value. But this last is, after all, what matters most. In other words, the objective value of love. Okay, what does it mean by that? Okay, it's very easy, and it's very common in our culture, to associate love with a feeling, because these feelings are strong. The desires are strong. The attractions are strong. But love also has what we call, okay, that's the subjective. That's how we experience, is what we feel. And in our culture, we're taught that everything's about your feelings. You ever notice how you watch the news? Watch the news tonight. There's some tragedy. A reporter comes up to somebody and sticks a microphone in their face and said, "How do you feel about the fact that your house just burned down?" How do we feel about it? How do you think I feel about it, you know? How do you feel about global warming? Well, kind of warm right now, I guess, you know. No, the question should be, how do you think about it? But you notice how our culture defines everything in terms of feelings. And we get this idea that love then becomes equated with just feeling. Yes, feeling has something to do with it, but more so, objectively speaking, love is about a choice. There's an objective definition of it. It's free, it is honest, it is a choice, an act of the will to do what is best for the other, regardless of how you feel. That's the key. Regardless of how you feel. And that's the whole beauty and genius of a Christian love, which sets Christian love apart. Christian love, what do we called to do? Called to love our enemy. Do we feel good about our enemy? Heck no. It doesn't matter how you feel. You choose to do what is good for the other. And when you do, you're free. You're not bound by your feelings or how that person is to you. You're not restricted by that. You're free to choose to do what is right, what is best for their person. And that's one of the objective dimensions of love. It includes feelings sometimes, yes. Includes, again, that observation, that sensual attraction. Sure, those are all okay. It's just that we can't stop there. That's the point. That's what the Pope is trying to say. We got to move through all these things. They're all good in themselves. Got to move through to get down here and even further, what you're going to learn about in the other classes. So I guess it's pretty close now to time for questions. I think we're going to have some questions called in, if you have any. If not, then I can talk a little bit more. One of the reasons that are we still on?
Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons why like the church, or if you're a young person, your parents or priest will
Say it again.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of hard to understand.
Okay. Hello? Okay. What was that again? Oh, how do you know, the question is, very good question, how do you know when love is true love? Well, you'll know that when you come to the end of the book, Love and Responsibility. And then you read all of Theology of the Body, then you'll know. Well, not really, that's part of it. But what are these books trying to say, actually? You got to finish the book, then you know what real love is. Okay, you know what real love is when, okay, love is greater than the sum of its parts. It's a mystery. It's something that you know deep inside. We are hardwired to know love because God is love and we're in His image and He put that part of Himself in us. So we do know deep inside. But what is it marked by? It's marked by this. When you can do this towards someone or they can do it towards you, they choose an act. That's what he said about the will. The act of the will means your choice to do, kind of move out in the direction of the person. Love is very outward oriented. It moves out towards the other to what is best for them. Not just good, but what is best for them, and doesn't count the cost to self. When you can do that, you are experiencing real love. And someone does it to you, they are truly loving you. That's how you'll know. And you do know.
What happens when sensuality and sentimentality go away for a long time in a marriage?
Okay. Other question is, yes? Yes, it does. It's on these earlier stages here. Now, maybe from the time they first see each other and they think they fell in love, maybe they do sustain a relationship and they get married and they're happy forever. Maybe that could happen. But it doesn't mean that what they had at the beginning was love. It can't be love because it has not run that test of time. There hasn't been a series of choices, of acts of will. There's been a feeling, an attraction, and that's all okay. It's wonderful. But it's not, you can't call it love. You can call it attraction, you can call it a titillation of the diaphragm, whatever, but it's not love yet. That's where you bring in the objective. See, it's very hard in our culture to define love with the objective dimension. Now, we're not being just objective, nor are we being just subjective. You have to have both. Why? Integration. Integration. Okay, you need both. Yeah, you got the emotions, the feeling, the attraction, but you also have that act of the will. When it comes down to it, because someone else asked, I think online they asked, what if the sensual and the sentiment seems to have disappeared, seem to have waned? Good question, because it happens with a lot of couples. That's one of the reasons why in the church, especially in the Western church, they use the concept of a contract or covenant with marriage. It's very ingenious. Why? Because the wisdom of the church and the Bible and God knew that there may be times when you don't feel you don't feel that love anymore, or you don't have the sensual attraction anymore. So the church and God knew that doesn't matter. Something else still remains. And what is that? It's that covenant, that contract, as it were, that agreement, that promise that calls the people involved to still choose to do what is best for each other. Even if everything else has seemed to have waned. Doesn't matter. Choose to do what is best for each other. And you'll be amazed at how the sensual and the sentimental can actually return. And almost every couple will go through that at some point. Marriages and relationships go through, valleys and ups and downs and so on. And there's times when you just don't feel like it. I remember the famous comedian Bill Cosby would do this routine about marriage. He says, you wake up one day and you look at your partner in the bed and just go, you parasite. What he was saying is that almost every couple will come to a point like that or similar to that at some point in their marriage, even if it's just a short time or temporary. The important thing is there's a choice, the act of the will. And the sentiment can come back.
Why is it the best thing to stay together?
The best thing to stay together? Yeah. The reason why we urge staying together is because you need time for this to develop. You need time for that sentiment to come back. And if you cut it off, in a sense, you could have robbed yourself of that opportunity. You don't know that maybe down the line, many couples fall in love again and again and again, even after multiple crises, because they stay together, they keep trying to choose hope against hope, and they find that they rediscover each other again. So one of the wisdoms of staying together is to allow that time for that to happen. Yes. Do you know how the way you heal it, believe it or not? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the question is, I'll repeat the question. The question is, men are wounded, especially in the sensual, by our culture. Women are often wounded in the area of the sentiment, in terms of relationships, and hurt by intimacy and so on. Their intimacy needs have been hurt or frustrated. How do we heal this? Well, believe it or not, I think the answer is by doing what you're doing right now. I said about finishing the book, okay, tongue in cheek, but at the same time I mean that. In other words, we will turn this around, and we can turn this around when people learn how to see each other as man and woman. The why behind it. See, that was the question that John Paul II said is the question for the modern world. The question is, who is she for him? Who is he for her? Why are they man and woman? What's the ultimate why? Therefore, then, what are their needs? How do we understand each other in the light of God's intentions? This comes to us through the theology of the body, and before that even love and responsibility. And through that knowledge, by raising and forming children, all generations, in that view, which is really the Catholic worldview, that's how we heal from this. Theology of the body is very healing, and it's very preventative too.
In the movie Avatar, they say, "I see you." That's how they greet each other.
Oh, I see you,
It's
yeah.
really cool. It's like, I see who you really are.
Yes, it's... What's that? Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, they're referring to the quote about the male being attracted to the female being attracted to the male. And the question is, what about in the case of same-sex attraction? You notice the Pope purposely kept that aside, if you notice in his quote there. And he said that this is, the question was that this has come up several times in these discussions, and as always will. It's a very hot issue today. This issue is one of my favorites to address, as it were, or one that I feel is the greatest urgency to address. I don't have time to address it tonight because there's a lot of nuance, a lot of reconfiguring or thinking in order to answer this, but I'll just say this real quickly. Remember, the body doesn't lie. That's why we call it the theology of the body. The body tells you who and what you are, where your attraction is supposed to be. In other words, what you are ordered to. The fact that someone may not feel this and therefore have what we call same-sex attraction does not change that. It indicates that there has been a kind of a disturbance in their development. In other words, to identify in a way that's consistent with the language, the theology of their body. Now, this needs to be, of course, addressed with a lot of compassion and sensitivity, but, as the Pope said, if we're going to be sensitive to someone or compassionate or loving, you cannot do it without the truth. And the truth is, the body tells us who we are to be, who we're ordered towards. I know this gets into a huge issue which requires actually several classes, but I deal with this on my radio program, or you can even write to me. You can go to the taborlife.org if you want to talk more about this with me, or through email or whatever. taborlife.org. That's a website that I'm connected with, and you can write to me there. And I also deal with these issues, like I said, on my radio program. I hope that helps. I know it doesn't do a lot of justice because of the time, but it's a... I would go to the website I mentioned, taborlife.org. And also, if you go to CatholicRadioInternational.com, that's my radio program in which I deal with these exact issues on that program. And I deal with all the other hot issues of our day. So those are two places you can go to find out more about me, or to, if you want to engage me in these discussions. Tabor, you can write to me there at taborlife.org. The email address would be taborlife@earthlink.net. That's the actual email. And then also CatholicRadioInternational.com. It's an internet radio program. My program is called A Body of Truth. Also, for those of you, if you're young adults, come on out to the singles conference. You'll hear more. Oh, one more thing. I also have articles that I put on Catholic Exchange in the Theology of the Body section of Catholic Exchange, in which, in fact, I'm going to run a series on the same-sex attraction on there. They have to cut off? No, that's they're real strict. Okay, thank you, Father. Thank you.
Okay, now we're still streaming. I'm going to shut this off in a second and say goodbye to the people in the chat room. How many people? 2? Well, in ours. Okay, we're going to stop the recording here.